Okay.
Welcome to the Contractor Safety Orientation for Brightmark's RNG projects operated by NACE. Today we will cover general health and safety topics, emergency procedures and evacuation meeting sites, hazards on each site, and safe work practices, as well as NACE procedures. Working safely is a part of everyone's job. If something happens, it needs to be reported immediately. If you need something, please ask your designated NACE point of contact. If there's something you do not know or if something doesn't look right, please reach out to your NACE point of contact and ask. You do not operate valves or equipment without prior authorization and not without proper permit in place. A NACE employee will be assigned as your primary point of contact before you are assigned to a site. All visitors must sign in and out at the visitor's log for accountability in case of emergency. A sign-in book is located at each facility as well as the office. Know where emergency equipment is located so you know where it is before you need it. Eye wash stations, fire extinguishers, safety showers, emergency phones, etc. Your NACE contact will discuss emergency procedures with you on your arrival to site, including what to do and where to go for various types of emergencies. Standard policies. NACE reserves the right to conduct searches and inspections of plant property or any part of any individual property that is brought onto a plant site. All activities are monitored and recorded by video camera. Parking is provided for all contractors. NACE does not assume any responsibility in connection with use of the parking areas, nor any risk of loss or damage as a result of using these facilities. Vehicles allowed access into the plant site shall not block emergency egress routes at any time. Emergency contacts will be provided to you for your specific job site upon your arrival or prior to job commencement. Corporate contacts are listed below. Please report all injury, illness, fire, vehicle accidents, property damage, or other incidents immediately. Initial written report is required by the end of the shift, and an accident investigation report will be required within 2 weeks of the occurrence. Immediately notify your NACE contact of any OSHA visit or any OSHA compliant issues. Fire extinguishers are located in various areas throughout the NACE controlled areas of each facility. In case of a small fire, all employees or visitors who are trained in fire extinguisher use are authorized to use these extinguishers. Immediately notify your host that you have used an extinguisher to put out a fire so that it can be replaced or replenished. If one extinguisher does not put out the fire or it is unsafe to put out the fire, safely evacuate the area to the site evacuation point and notify your host to call the local fire department. There is no smoking at any Brightmark facility. Most of the areas are primary class 1 areas, meaning flammable gas is present or has a high likelihood of being present. Never exceed a speed of 20 miles per hour while driving on any Brightmark RNG site. As with any facility, fitness for duty is a must. No drugs or alcohol are allowed, or no one under the influence is allowed. Any issues with this could wind up with your contractor being banned from the site. No firearms on site, no fighting or aggressive behavior. Required site PPE. All people who join the sites are required to wear steel-toed boots with leather uppers, impact resistant safety glasses, hard shell hat, high visibility vest or high visibility clothing, and hearing protection where required. The wearing of ANSI approved high visibility vests is required at all times. While walking the site, remain alert to the ever-present hazard of truck and vehicle traffic on site. Be particularly careful walking on or across or driving near blind corners. All electrical equipment must be properly insulated, grounded, and have ground fault protection. Use explosion-proof equipment when required. Report all injuries, near misses, emergencies, unsafe conditions to your primary point of contact as soon as possible. Preliminary reports are due by the end of that shift. Hazards on site that you will be exposed to when working at Brightmark facilities. High pressure natural gas and propane, biogas, explosivity and fire hazard, contains no odorant, um, no olfactory warning of presence, high voltage electricity, high pressure, temperature, steam and water, hard surfaces, fuel oil, waste oil, chemicals, remotely started rotating equipment, biological hazards. Feedstock is manure, contains bacteria, parasites, etc. Um, there are confined spaces on site, and no contractor will ever enter in a confined space without proper approval and paperwork from your NACE point of contact. There are atmospheric hazards, including carbon monoxide, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and LEL ammonia as well. There can be low O2 levels in some area as well. So please make sure you discuss this in detail with your NACE point of contact before going into any potentially hazardous atmosphere. Lockout, tagout hazards present, fall hazards, traffic hazards. There's also a noise limit at the facility, and you must wear the proper hearing protection. Um, Several of our areas are considered class 1 explosive areas, meaning that no spark producing work can go on in that area without taking the proper precautions. If you have any questions, please refer to your NACE point of contact. If you are doing any type of hot work or live work, please make sure that you stop at that point, talk with your NACE point of contact, and make sure that the proper procedures are done and the proper paperwork is in place. Some of the other hazards on site that we spoke of are the biogas, which is on or near the digesters, but also at the upgrade pads. Be very cautious of these areas. Noxious gases can be produced, and you need to be very aware of where you are. Some of the other hazards on site that we talked about, you will find waste oil, biogas, chemicals, iron sponge, and again, stored biogas. So, please keep in mind that these hazards are present, and make sure that you talk with your point of contact to protect yourself. Chemicals and high pressure gas that we spoke of. Use of industrial trucks. Contractors must designate one employee per shift that will be responsible for forklift duties. Only that individual will operate the forklift. NACE equipment must not be used without authorization by your NACE point of contact and a demonstration of competence of operating that piece of equipment. Fall protection. NACE requires that the use of fall protection on any surfaces above 4 feet of height in which you are not properly surrounded by handrail, etc. Do not mix rigging equipment with fall protection. Make sure that the anchor can hold 5,000 pounds. And if you have a question about a tie-off point or its validity, please ask. Inspect equipment every time you use it. Contractors are expected to provide their own PPE. Taking chances and climbing work without proper fall protection equipment will not be tolerated. Work permits are required whenever a hazard is present. That includes lockout tagouts, confined space entry, hot work permit, and other. Job hazard analysis need to be completed for all permits. It helps you understand the hazards and risks associated with the work and remove them before an incident happens. Anytime you need to delineate any area, you can use yellow caution or red danger tape. Remember, if you're in a yellow caution tape area is being used, you need to look around, see what hazards exist before going through that area. If you need to pass through a red danger tape area, do not proceed and go through. You will need subject to removal from the job site. You do not enter across red tape without express permission from your point of contact. Work permits are required for all contract labor. Where's my mouse? Technical difficulties. All contractors will keep areas and facilities in good repair. Lockout, tagout. Lotto permits are issued through the control room. All contractors will have a NACE contact person for the job. That person must be signed on to the job as long as the contractor is signed in. All isolation points at NACE are locked. All isolation locks are red in color and are accompanied by a danger tag. Keys for the isolation locks are returned to the control room and placed in the lockbox specified for that lotto. Everyone who signs on that lotto will be issued a lock that they must place onto the lockbox. Contractors should use their own locks. We issue locks if necessary, but not as a general rule. The key for the lock is kept with you until you sign off of that lockout tagout. Sure, what's going on there? Here's some examples of lockout tagouts or group boxes that you may hang on in the future. All personal locks must be removed by the end of your shift. A contractor foreman may sign on and place a lock onto the lotto lockbox representing his crew, but then his key must be placed into a separate contractor lockbox onto which each crew member then places their lock. The contractor foreman is then in control of the separate contractor lockbox. Remember to sign off of the lotto when you are done with the job. Unauthorized removal of tags or locks is grounds for immediate removal from the site. Hot work. You need a permit to do any hot work outside of the designated areas, such as the maintenance shop. Adequate ventilation shall be provided whenever welding or cutting in confined spaces. Anyone entering a confined space must follow the requirements of SMP 7 confined space entry. Prior to cutting or burning any elevated areas, any equipment below shall be protected from sparks and slag. The area around the hot work permit shall be inspected and removed of combustible materials. Where appropriate, PPE, and make sure you put your job impact in front of someone else, doesn't impact someone else. Use protective barriers if necessary. A hot work permit is required for all work except for areas designated for that use. Areas so designated must be inspected prior to use. The hot work permit must be posted in that area where the hot work is being performed. If welding, do not leave electrodes in holders when the weld is finished, as this constitutes a fire hazard. No stick and stinger. Class 1 areas are marked to warn of explosion hazard. In these areas, no cell phones will be present, no spark producing materials or flame producing activities will take place. All personnel in Class 1 areas must wear Class 1 rated bump tested calibrated personnel gas monitors due to the potential for leaks. All confined spaces are identified with signage. Do not enter a space until the space has been authorized for entry and a permit issued. Permits are issued through your NACE point of contact. If all hazards can be removed, the space may be reclassified to a non-permit required confined space. Continuous monitoring with a calibrated air gas monitor is required for all occupied spaces. At any time and in any space, if anything smells, feels, or seems wrong, or obviously if a gas monitor goes off, leave that space immediately and notify your NACE point of contact. Contractor personnel will comply with all provisions of the established confined space entry procedure and receive permission from plant personnel before entering any confined space. Only the contractors who have been trained in confined space entry may enter a confined space. You have a right to know the hazards of the chemicals you work with. Safety data sheets are required for all chemicals. We have SDSs for all of our chemicals and are glad to provide if you're working in an area that warrants it. You need to have the SDS for all of your chemicals on site as well and available to us as needed. All containers need to be labeled with contents and hazards as well as PPE requirements for that chemical. If you bring chemicals on site and do not use it, remove from the site under proper disposal and do not leave it. Conduct daily crew meetings with site operators. Allow everyone to provide input. Everyone knows what is happening for the day. Understand the hazards presented and coordinated with operations. Get your permits for the day and have available at the job site. Post your permits at the job site. And when conditions change, stop work and contact your NACE point of contact to identify whether updates to the permits are required. These all go towards an effective pre-job briefing program. So to wrap up, working safely is not an option. It is a component and expected requirement of the job of all contractors. Near misses, if something does happen, report it and get it corrected so someone doesn't get hurt the next time. Use stop work authority as needed. Work safely and come back tomorrow. Any questions or comments, please contact your NACE point of contact. Thank you. Be safe.